We are about to enter the darkest part of the human mind. If you're ready, stay with us until the end of the story. In 1970, Donna, a nursing student, was living a peaceful and carefree life in New York. She was on the verge of graduating from university, and her days were filled with studying, practical training, and planning a future dedicated to helping others. Donna was a brave, serious, and determined girl, someone who didn't fear challenges and pursued her goals with a strong will. Her roommate Angie was also a nursing student. Angie and Donna were close friends and spent days and nights together in a small apartment. Angie, with her lively and energetic personality, always saw life with hope and optimism, believing that nothing could stand in the way of their happiness. One spring day, Donna received a birthday gift from her mother. It seemed like a simple, harmless gift at first, but fate had a different story planned for it. It was a closed doll with a smiling face and yarn hair, named Annabelle. Donna's mother had bought this doll from an antique store, a place filled with many old, handmade items on its dark and mysterious shelves. Donna's mother wanted to give her a childhood keepsake full of innocence with this doll. Unaware of the events awaiting them, Donna and Angie placed the doll in a corner of the living room. Every time they passed Annabelle, they would glance at its smiling face and large, innocent eyes and go about their daily routines without any worry. Everything seemed peaceful, or so it appeared. A few weeks after Annabelle's arrival, Donna and Angie noticed that the doll was inexplicably moving. At first, these movements were small and subtle. For example, the doll's hands would slightly change position or suddenly be angled differently. They thought these movements were due to their own forgetfulness and ignored them. However, over time, the doll began appearing in various places around the apartment. One day, when Angie returned home from university, she noticed that Annabelle was sitting on her bed, even though she clearly remembered placing it in the corner of the living room that morning. Angie asked in surprise, "Did you put the doll on my bed?" Donna, with a face full of astonishment and worry, replied, "No, I didn't touch the doll at all." Soon, things escalated beyond simple displacements, becoming more complex and unnerving. One day, Donna found a small note on her desk, written in childish handwriting, saying, "Help me." The message was short and mysterious, filling Donna with an inexplicable sense of unease. Since she didn't keep such notes at home, she couldn't find a logical explanation for it, and showed it to Angie. Angie too was puzzled and anxious at seeing the message, but tried to hide her worries with a forced smile. In the following days, other similar messages appeared. Phrases like, "Help me," and "I want to be seen" were scrawled on strange pieces of paper. The handwriting on these notes was always childish and untidy, giving the impression that an innocent, restless spirit was writing them. Donna and Angie became intensely anxious, and both were deeply afraid of the situation. Gradually, rumors of a supernatural force haunting their apartment began to cross Donna and Angie's minds. Both were rational, scientific people, Yet recent events had pushed them to the brink of doubt and fear. Annabelle, who initially seemed like just an innocent, simple thief, had now transformed into a mysterious and terrifying presence, ensnaring them with its movements and eerie messages. One night, while they were each asleep in their rooms, they heard the faint sound of footsteps coming from the living room. The steps were slow and steady, as if someone was moving calmly and without haste. Donna and Angie both woke up, and overwhelmed by indescribable fear, left their rooms. When they reached the living room, what they saw took their breath away. Annabelle was sitting in the middle of the room, appearing to gaze at them with its soulless eyes. If you dare, listen to this story till the end, like this video and stay with us. After the incident the previous night, Donna and Angie decided that they needed to find the cause of this event, no matter what. Fear had cast a shadow over them, and they couldn't simply ignore what was happening. On the advice of one of their friends, they contacted a medium with extensive experience in communicating with spirits. They hoped she could offer them some help. On the appointed day, the medium arrived at their small apartment. She was a middle-aged woman with a calm face and penetrating eyes, carefully surveying the surroundings. She took the doll in her hands, paused for a moment, and then, with a deep and steady voice, said, "This doll was not simply made. The spirit of a young girl named Annabelle is trapped inside this doll." Donna and Angie were shocked to hear this. The medium explained that this girl had lost her life in this very place many years ago and had been searching for a safe place for herself. Through the doll, she was communicating with the outside world, and the messages and movements were the cries of an innocent child's spirit seeking attention and help. Donna and Angie felt a sense of sympathy for the innocent child's spirit trapped in the doll. The medium told them that if they wanted, they could keep the doll with them and calm it by showing care and attention. She added that Annabelle needed their help and affection, and as long as they didn't harm her, she would not pose a danger to them. After the medium left, Donna and Angie decided to keep the doll with them and treat it with more kindness. Perhaps this was the only way to bring peace to Annabelle's restless spirit. However, after a few days, they realized that things had not only not improved, but were becoming stranger and more dangerous by the day. One night, while Donna and Angie were talking in the living room, they suddenly heard a sound resembling the breaking of glass. They rushed towards the source of the noise and, to their horror, saw that one of the frames on the wall had shattered. With Annabelle sitting directly beneath it, her hands oddly raised as if someone had forcefully placed them in that position. At that moment, Donna looked at her hands and noticed a drop of blood dripping from her finger onto the floor. But the more terrifying detail was that on the wall, written in blood, were the words, "Get out." They were terrified and had no doubt that this doll was carrying an evil force with the intention of harming them. After the bloody incident on the wall, Donna and Angie decided that they could no longer keep the doll with them. Fear was clearly visible in their eyes. Every time they looked at Annabelle, it felt as though they were facing a dark and living entity waiting for the right moment to take revenge. They decided to take the doll out of the house and rid themselves of it forever. However, they soon realized that escaping from the doll was not as easy as they had thought. In the following nights, even though they had hidden the doll in a closet, Annabelle continued to make her presence known. In the middle of the night, they would hear the faint sound of footsteps coming from the hallway, slowly approaching their bedroom. But every time they opened the door, no one was there. Only the doll remained, sitting in the corner of the hallway, staring at them with a smiling face in the darkness. Annabelle the doll is about to create some very terrifying moments for Donna and Angie, so stay with us until the end of the video. One night, as Donna and Angie lay awake in terror, unable to sleep, they suddenly heard a muffled, mysterious sound. It seemed to come from deep within the doll, a whisper in an unknown language that filled the room. They stared at Annabelle, bewildered. It was as if the doll was speaking to someone they couldn't see. In the meantime, one of their close friends named Lou came over to spend the night with them and offered some comfort. Lou, a brave and daring man, didn't believe in ghost stories or supernatural forces and always tried to downplay their fears. He told them, "It's just an old doll. It's nothing but your own illusions." But that night, while everyone was asleep, Lou suddenly woke up, feeling like he couldn't breathe. It was as though an invisible force was squeezing his throat. He struggled in panic and saw that Annabelle was hovering above him, staring at him. Lou tried to get up, but he felt a sharp pain in his chest. In the morning, when Donna and Angie went to check on him, they found 3 deep, intersecting scratches on his chest. Scratches that seemed to have been made by claws. Lou was deeply terrified by the incident and now believed that Annabelle was more than just an ordinary object. He urged Donna and Angie to get rid of the doll as soon as possible and seek help. Donna and Angie decided to contact Ed and Lorian Warren, the famous paranormal investigators, for assistance. Ed and Lorian came to their home, and after examining the doll, they quickly determined that there was a dark, malevolent force within Annabelle, not the spirit of an innocent child, but a being from the depths of darkness trying to find a way to enter the world of the living. Lorraine, with her penetrating gaze, stared at the doll and said, "This entity is dangerous and is trying to possess you through this doll. Annabelle must be removed from this house and kept in a safe, contained place." After thoroughly inspecting the house and speaking with Donna, Angie, and Lou, Ed and Lauren decided to take the Annabelle doll with them to their home and place it in their paranormal museum. There, the doll would be kept in a specially protected case to prevent its malevolent power from harming anyone. Donna and Angie, filled with anxiety and worry, handed the doll over to Ed and Lauren, hoping that they would finally be able to escape this terrifying nightmare. As Ed and Lorian got into the car and placed the doll in the back seat, everything seemed normal. However, just minutes after they started driving, Lorian felt a strange heaviness and fear. She turned to Ed and said, "I have a bad feeling. It's like something is following us." Suddenly, the car began to shake. The brakes and steering became uncontrollably erratic. It tried to regain control of the vehicle, but it felt as though an invisible force was trying to steer the car toward the cliffside along the road. Lorian anxiously looked at the doll and said, "This is its doing. It doesn't want to live here." In that moment, it decided to pull the car over and recite a special prayer, hoping that the demonic force within the doll would weaken. After saying the prayer, he got back in the driver's seat and they continued their journey, knowing that this was just the beginning of a long battle. Once they finally reached their home, Ed and Lorian took the doll to their museum. The museum housed cursed and terrifying artifacts, each with its own horrifying story. But Annabelle was different. From the moment she entered the museum, it felt as if all the objects and the space itself were under the influence of the doll's demonic power. Ed and Lorian placed the doll in a special glass case and sealed it. They inscribed protective prayers on the case to serve any connection the doll might have with the outside world. However, they always warned visitors not to touch or provoke the case, as the doll possessed a power beyond imagination. But the story of Annabelle doesn't end there. Many museum visitors who ignored the warnings or joked around with the doll faced terrifying fates. One visitor who had carelessly tapped the glass case died in a fatal accident on his way back from the museum. Similar stories have been told of others who interacted with Annabelle in some way. If you were truly scared by this story, let us know in the comments which moment frightened you the most so that future stories can be even scarier. The story of Annabelle, with its accompanying horror and curse, remains etched in memory as a reminder that some objects in our world possess powers beyond human understanding.